Welcome back to Season 2 of the Tabak Business Sales Podcast with Damien and Sam. This is episode number 4, and this is all about protecting your legacy and talking about confidentiality within a business sale. Now, on average, 90% of our businesses that we sell are actually sold in confidence, which means that customers and staff don't know the business is for sale and don't know it's sold until it's actually sold. Now, look, you meet Will and Sammy in episode 1. They'll be doing a lot of hospitality businesses, and a lot of those businesses are sold publicly and they're named, whereas a lot of what Damien and I do in all different industries are actually kept in confidence. So, Damien, why wouldn't you tell the world that your business is for sale?
Sam, it's a great question, and I'd like to give some examples of where we have had quite open sales and how that process has evolved versus where you might be more reluctant as a vendor to let the market know. So if we talk about probably the exceptions more than the rule initially is, hey, what about an open sale? Well, you tend to try and, if you've got a strong, aspirational, successful brand in the marketplace, why wouldn't you want people to know? Because they'd like to get involved and be a part of that legacy. A vendor often will have a really high staff engagement and trust within their team, and they will be of a personality type that just doesn't want to, be seen as being deceitful is the wrong word, but just being covert and kind of hiding things, and those personality types are very much out there, and they're very, very people oriented, and generally where vendors respect their team and really believe their team adds value, they want them to be involved in the process. And again, occasionally where there's either fewer competition in the market or a vendor doesn't really have client concerns, then they'd be more comfortable. An example I've got a couple this year actually, where the business was quite openly advertised as what it was. The brand was there. The benefits of that is it makes it really easy. One was based in Christchurch, one was well out of Christchurch. For the one down south, it was just really easy for the owners to then walk through buyers during the working hours. They can see the staff working. It was a construction-related business. They could see the staff on site. They could see the factory and the machinery and how it all worked. And they could have really open conversations with our vendors and even have a bit of a yarn with the staff. We also find that when you've got those sorts of brands, their client base is very, very loyal. And I've had stories in the past where we've actually used a client database, their MailChimp database, and actually found buyers from that database.
So one of the customers
purchased one of the customers purchased the business because they believe in the brand. So if you've got a strong aspirational brand and a really good team that you trust and you feel won't be spooked by the potential of a new owner coming in, then it may well be worth identifying the business, because it might just create a wider scope of potential buyers. Coming back to why wouldn't you? Well, look, this is the majority, and mostly, without getting too much into the psychology of it, look, a lot of the vendors we're dealing with are retiring vendors, baby boomers, as I am. Sam is not, but they tend to be a little bit more command control personality types. They might be more concerned that, hey, look, if the staff get wind of it, they're gonna leave. And the last thing you want is your staff leaving, particularly critical staff, when you're on the market. So there's a very valid reason for keeping it quiet. The other two key areas that they're concerned about competitors getting wind of it. And that's a valid concern, where a competitor might try and twist the knife and say, oh, well, he's not going to be around for much longer. Do you really want to put your business there? Or suppliers getting wind of it. And so, there are some very, very valid reasons as to why you wouldn't tell your staff. Sam, have you got any comment on an ideal type?
Yeah, because staff is key, right? So look, when we talk about selling a business in confidence, what we're actually saying is we don't name it. When we go out to market, we might say it's a manufacturing business and it's in this sort of sector and it turns over this and it's in Christchurch. And so nothing is named. People inquiring at that stage do not know the name of the business. And the people that do find out the name and sign an NDA, we screen and we make sure that our vendors are comfortable with those people finding out the name. Now, a key to any business is staff. So the staff, generally speaking, do not know. In most of our sales and confidence, the staff actually don't know the business has been sold until we have a buyer and the sale is actually unconditional. Now, you might be thinking, gee whiz, that's pretty intense. But if it is say, staff in a manufacturing business, they're not really key. They don't need to know while the business is for sale, because it could take 6 months, and that's actually quite stressful for the staff. Thinking,
Yes.
am I going to have a job?
Yep.
99 times out of 100, they always do have a job. They just have a new contract with the new owner.
Yep.
But they don't understand this, and it can be really upsetting for them. So there's no need to actually tell them. And if you have key staff, it's quite different, because they may be really important in that business. And from a buyer's perspective, they're going to want to know that those staff is actually going to stay once they've purchased the business. Because if they're a flight risk and they've got all the relationships with customers, it could be a bit of an impediment for them. So you may want to sit down with those key staff and actually explain that the business is going to market, get them engaged early on. For some buyers, it actually may be a clause in the sale and purchase contract that they want to meet that key staff member before they actually push the green light and go unconditional. We'd always make sure that that's the last thing they do. So we want to make sure finance is approved, the landlord lease reassignment's approved. It's the final piece of the puzzle before they commit. It's just that they sit down and meet that manager, for example, just to ensure that they're happy with the fact that it's for sale and they get a good feeling that they're going to sign a contract. Or it may even be that the clause is that they're going to sign a contract with the new owner. So there, in that case, you actually do want to sit down with those key staff and let them know.
Yep. Thank you, Sam. And I think in closing for the confidentiality topic, sometimes we do what's called off-market sales, and really that's just a matchmake. One of the things we do take a lot of time to do within Tabak is we try to meet our buyers, particularly buyers that are very keen, enthusiastic. We have a coffee, we try to understand what they don't want, what they might want, what their funding capability is. And so at any point in time, and right now we've probably got a dozen, Sam, of people that constantly email us, ring us, saying, hey, look, has anything come up? I'm still very, very keen to pursue a business opportunity. So every now and again, we'll meet a vendor, they'll come on board and we'll think, you know what, this would be perfect for Joe Blogs. Mm-hmm. So we give Joe a call. We say, hey, look, we've got something in this particular industry. Is that something that might be of interest? And if they say yes, well, we can very quickly engage them confidentially, and then they can walk with us as we prepare the business for sale. And so we can then get to a point where relatively quickly and extremely confidentially, because it hasn't even gone to our market, let alone to the wider database and website, where we've got a potential buyer on the hook. Now, if it all goes well, and we probably do 1 or 2 of these a year, if it all goes well, the purchaser is really, really pleased because they've got, I guess, a leg up on the other buyers in the market, and they've got a really good opportunity that they can then move forward on. But the quid pro quo for that is that they're going to pay asking price or close to asking price. We haven't even gone to market. So, as long as we value the business appropriately, then we've got a good offer from a genuine buyer and a really strong momentum going into a due diligence process. And Sam, I know from 1 or 2 that we've both done, they don't often fall over.
No.
I've got one that's currently in the final stages at the moment, and it's moving through, touch wood. We've talked about spanners occasionally through this podcast series. I think we've hopefully hit all the spanners we're going to get with that particular deal. But, a matchmake or an off-market sale really does benefit both an owner and a buyer. And they're good to do, and they are probably slightly lower cost of sale for us as well, which isn't a bad thing.
And look, and generally speaking, those buyers that we introduce off market, it's not just somebody we met yesterday. It's somebody that we know is genuinely going to be a really good fit, which is obviously important. We know they've got access to capital, and we know, more importantly, they can move very quickly, which is actually a really good result for a vendor. Yep. Just one final piece about confidentiality is that as much as we do everything we can do to keep everything in confidence, we can't guarantee it. We can have people sign NDAs, we screen our buyers, but people talk to their significant others who may not understand, and it can somehow get leaked. People may see a listing on a website as generic as it is. They may actually think, I know that business. Always have a plan in place for one of your star members to come up to you and go, Sam, I just heard that you're selling the business. Is that correct? You're not going to lie and say no, because obviously you wouldn't do that. But have a plan in place to go, yes, that's correct. This is the reason why we've kept it in confidence, but this is a situation. And then do you let the other staff know, etc., etc. Always plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, I agree with you if you get absolutely nailed. But I've had the occasional vendor who said, "Oh, I'm a supplier," said something about, "Oh, are you for sale?" And my response to my vendor was just laugh it off and say, "Hey, every business is for sale. Do you want to buy it? If you
Absolutely.
write us out a check."
Yeah.
You can kind of laugh it off a little bit if you're not being absolutely nailed down, if it's just a bit of scuttlebutt,
Yeah.
and play it that way. But you did right. We absolutely try to ensure confidentiality, but ultimately humans are humans, and sometimes they can sign all the documents in the world, but if they don't adhere to those, then the only thing we can do in retrospect is we red star them on our database, and they get very little look at much else coming their way.
It's a fun call to have too.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes us for episode 4 of the Tabak Business Sales Podcast.